Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hindu Edge webinar. This month, we're exploring the use of artificial intelligence or AI in education. My name is Priscilla Jebraj. I'm a journalist with the Hindu. And now I admit that I explored the possibility of writing this introduction to the topic using ChatGPT, probably the most popular and best known AI app with the general public. Now, if you've heard of AI at all outside the pages of science fiction, it's probably through this app. When it was released almost 2 years ago, it gained 1 million users in just 5 days. And quite a number of those early adopters were school and college students who jumped on the idea of a chatbot that could finish their homework in a matter of seconds, write an essay, do their research. For many, it was a dream. For many educators, on the other hand, it was a nightmare idea, especially since plagiarism software didn't always accurately detect the use of AI. And so they worried about cheating and that learning outcomes would suffer. And a number of campuses banned the use of such apps immediately or put in stringent restrictions. But there's more to AI than ChatGPT or other such large language models. And educators are just starting to explore the ways that AI tools can be used to enhance teaching, learning, assessment, research, even the administrative tasks on campus can be done sometimes through AI in ways that are both effective and ethical. So can it be used for personalized tutoring, for developing content in multiple languages, for analyzing large data sets or visualizing them? The possibilities seem endless and so much more than just completing my last minute homework. And there are concerns which still remain, especially with regard to transparency, equal access to the technology, or privacy, data privacy, copyright, and the accuracy and bias of using such tools. So what are these tools and how can you use them both effectively and ethically, whether you're a student or a teacher, or in education technology or in policy making? We hope all of these are here in our audience today, and we hope you have some questions. We have an experienced panel to give us some answers and maybe to raise some new questions as well in such an emerging field. As we seek to equip students for a future in which AI is going to be a fact of life. So our panelists include Arun Tanigarala. He's a professor at IIT Madras, currently on lien at IIT Tirupati. He's a part of the Data Science and AI department at IIT Madras. He's also the chief coordinator of the Union Education Ministry's Swayamprabha program, which creates content for online higher education programs across the country, and has also started exploring the use of AI in this regard. We also have S. Anand, who's co-founder and CEO of Gramener, a data visualization and analytics company, and which also looks at generative AI solutions. He's based in Singapore, and he likes to describe himself as an LLM psychologist. I believe that's the designation currently on his LinkedIn profile. And he has tips on how best to prompt and generate solutions from LLMs, such as ChatGPT. So I'm going to throw to both of them. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for joining us on this webinar.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So we're going to start with some presentations on what is AI and how it can be used in education. So we're going to start with Professor Tanigarala, and then we will move to Anand, and then we will move to some questions from our audience. Professor.
Yeah, Priscilla, can you confirm you're able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, this is something that we are so used to since COVID times. So yeah, it's great. Thank you very much for hosting the show and also having us on the panel. It's of course a very, very important topic as we go along, especially on the track of education and research. And obviously, I don't have a lot of answers, but maybe some answers and more of directions and questions as we go along. The whole objective of this presentation is to first give the big picture in which we are situated when it comes to AI in education, right? So this graphic here, that's the first objective, and there are a couple of other objectives as well. So if you see this graphic, it basically tells you that there are two layers today, as against a single layer that existed in the past. So in the past, and even today, we have the teacher, the learner, and then the societal conditions, maybe, largely including lifestyle, the thinking in the society and so on. And then you have the educational policies that are driving this entire education system. But in the last 10, 15 years, if I may say, there are three big entities that have come about. OERs, standing for Open Educational Resources, and then you have TEL, which is the Technology Enhanced Learning or Technology Enabled Learning, and then, of course, the big boss there, the AI. These are the three giant entities now that are pushing not only the teacher learner interaction into a new orbit, but also the lifestyle, the societal conditions, and therefore the educational policies, right? And I call together this era as open intel era, right? Open for open educational resources, intel for, of course, short form for intelligence, and also including tel. Now, obviously, this is a very complex and rapidly evolving relationship that's at play. And it's important to have this big picture before we even think of how AI will impact and then the solutions to some of the challenges that come about. Then there is this another scenario. This is, I want to draw the attention of our participants today and in the future to this big change in education that has gone from classroom education, which is highly specialized, homogeneous, and so on, to the large scale education, which has taken many institutes by storm, and many institutes have launched themselves into this orbit. And it is very attractive because you're able to reach out to learners at large, but it has a lot of challenges, especially because of the diversity, heterogeneity, and the multidimensionality, and so on. And then, of course, the administrative challenges. Inevitably, as you move from this classroom to large scale education, AI becomes the compelling tool, or the compelling platform, I might say, along with your digital and edutech tools. So there is, apart from AI naturally disrupting a lot of areas, we can see that it is perhaps the indispensable tool as we go forward, because we are making these big leaps, right? Now, this is this one slide, if, I mean, if for the readers, perhaps to capture what are the different ways in which AI can impact education, what it brings to the educational track for all of us, for the teachers, students, and parents. And each of us is a student, is a teacher, and is a parent, right? So the two broad things that AI brings to the education desk is personalized learning, which I'm sure many of us have been hearing, and it is really coming out very well, where it is able to cater to particular learner based on his or her academic background, based on his or her training, and so on. And then, of course, you have the knowledge enrichment. So a lot of LLMs that we hear today are like your live encyclopedias, interactive encyclopedias, which are able to give you knowledge. But of course, you have to be really careful with the knowledge that comes out. For the teacher, there are many ways in which AI comes to help and to aid, and perhaps to come up with a totally new way of teaching and creating content, and so on. So I have here listed 5 broad tasks. Of course, we don't have the time to go into detail in my presentation, but in our interaction, we can expand on each of this. But content creation, automation, like Priscilla mentioned, and tutoring and interactive simulations are some of the top ones that are currently happening. And augmented reality, virtual reality, gaming is something that is a relatively nascent area, and especially it'll take perhaps 2-3 years for especially the virtual reality and augmented reality to take off. Now, on the students and the administrator side, there are these other things that AI helps you with: assessment or grading, especially in large scale education, but you can use it for classroom education as well. And as we launch ourselves into a lot of online programs, we have to worry about the integrity of the and the fairness of the exams that we conduct. So we need integrity monitoring tools, and there are a lot of business opportunities as well. In fact, in each of this, there is a business opportunity, apart from fact that institutions and teachers have to realign, and so on. And then AI is useful for enriching your presentations, whether you're a teacher or a learner. You can see today there are fantastic tools that give you some very fancy presentations. You just give the text and they'll do that for you. But it should not stop at that. I'll talk about that a bit very soon. And then the other area where AI has been helping tremendously is in translation. So reaching out to masses who have been kind of cut off from a lot of the material that's available in other languages. Now that those barriers are being broken. Now, having seen this, I would like to say that all of this is possible, sustainable, and even going to be effective only if we work on these four pillars. All these four pillars are important. Number one, we need to worry about the ethics and regulations, although it appears as a second one here. But that's the first thing that we have to worry about. And worldwide, people are worried about this. And it's taking time because still there is not sufficient clarity as to how we define ethics in using AI tools. And so there have been a lot of conferences and so, but very soon we should be able to come up with some regulations and policies and so on at the government level, at the institution level, and so on. But very, very important for us to be able to use AI responsibly. Then you'll need to have the infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, none of this can be used. And thirdly, you need to have the training. So the literacy has to be there, the digital literacy, and all the stakeholders have to shift. The teachers, students, and parents have all got to go undergo some training, but of course at different levels, right? And then if the institutes really want to harness the power of AI, they have to bring about curriculum changes. So the message is realign. And there are many ways in which you can realign. I have jotted down a few points here. As I said, I'm not going to really go over everything that I've listed here, but I'll just very quickly go over some of the most important things, right? Um, of course, using LLMs to generate review questions and so on, people are slowly beginning to use it. I think at the institute level and the teacher level, we have to strive to bring about curriculum level changes. For example, we will have to teach students basics of AI and ML at the basic undergraduate level. And many institutions have started to do that pretty much like they teach math, physics, and other science courses and so on. And then, as I said, one has to provide digital literacy. And what I have written in the bracket, the T stands for teacher, S for student, and P for parent. Essentially saying which layers or which class of stakeholders the points are relevant to, right? Now, I would like to reiterate the point that we have to teach ethics. And this becomes challenging because when you're teaching ethics to a school child, it's much more difficult or different than from teaching ethics to an adult at an undergrad level or a grad level. But nevertheless, it has to be done. But what is the kind of approach you will take? What are the things that you would teach? Is really not very clear today, but efforts have to be made based on whatever common sense that we have right now and whatever occurs to us naturally. But as we go along, I'm sure a systematic thing will be evolved. And then a lot of students have begun to use AI based tools and edutech tools and so on. They have to worry about plagiarism. And this is something that's very, very important today in today's world. Plagiarism is a big no no. So there has to be an acknowledgement of usage of certain tools. And when you're collaborating with people, again, using and along with AI tools, there has to be a responsible usage of it. And very importantly, I said earlier, there have been many disruptive technologies that we have seen in the last few centuries. But this one is so different because it is interactive. It is not a technology that ends with the use by the consumer. It actually collects data, and it may give you wrong answers. So these are the two, it may give you wrong solutions. These are the two main differences between any technology that we have seen in the past. Could be a computer or could be a calculator or steam engine and so on. These two stand out. And therefore, we have to train our students, our children, about handling this AI with AI tools with care, because they may be giving away data. They may not even know that data is being stored somewhere, and we may not even have an idea of how it is put to use and so on. So data privacy is one of the most important things that has to be addressed. And then, of course, biases, because a lot of solutions may actually be biased. We know that there are many discussions about this. So we'll have to train our students in validating these answers, thinking through these answers, having discussions, and not just relying on the solutions that come out. I just want to kind of conclude by saying that when, just as the way we want to see the big picture of AI in the open intel era, the role of AI in the open intel era, we also have to see what role each of us has to play in the entire education system. And this is a schematic that shows the interconnected contributors, if I may use that phrase, just to highlight the fact that institute alone or teachers alone or libraries alone, they cannot really bring about a synergistic and a very effective change. They all have to work together collectively. And yes, each of it will have its own time constant, but the action has to happen very, very soon. And one of the things that you see in this slide is self learning, right? Something that Swayam and Swayam Prabha or Swayam Plus, all of this actually is all about self learning. So we'll have to train in kids in self learning, and we, to the extent that we may have to request universities to seriously consider offering a course on self learning at the undergrad level, or even in fact at the school level itself. See, we have been learning by ourselves even during even 30, 40, 50 years ago, but that component has now increased multifold. Therefore, kids have to be trained, all of us have to be trained in self learning. And finally, we have to train ourselves in asking, something which Anand is going to talk about. A lot of courses on prompt engineering have come out, have been coming up. Culturally, we have been talking about how to ask, how to speak to people in the professional world, personal world, and so on. But now this has also entered the technological world. So we should know how to ask even a GPT based or an AI based tool. And that's what I'm hoping that the readers will ask very pointed questions so that we have a very engaging conversation. That's about it. I'll stop at this point. Over to you, Priscilla.
You're on mute, Priscilla.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Professor. That raised a lot of ideas and issues of what we should keep in mind and the ways, and throws open some opportunities. But let me move to Anand to speak about how should we ask questions.
I'll begin by talking about how I'm using AI. And this is driven by primarily one thing that I've learned. And that's based on a study that I've got on my screen. Not entirely sure if my screen is visible. Okay, not the screen. So let
It
me
is visible.
stop
The
sharing.
screen is visible.
Sure. Though I probably wanted to share a different screen, which is an interesting thing. Sorry, this is yeah. Okay. No, I still have a different screen. Hold on. This didn't happen last time. Okay. Okay. Yes. Now we have the right screen. And the pleasures of modern technology. So there was this study that showed students who are using LLMs as their tutors, who are talking to LLMs and understanding what the LLM is saying by asking it for explanations, did better. They scored more and they understood more. Students who were using it to solve the exercises for them did worse. And this is kind of obvious. You don't try to learn, you won't learn. But what also struck me was those who had not used LLMs before were particularly prone to using them poorly. So it's not laziness, it's inexperience also that nudges people towards using LLMs as a crutch rather than as a learning tool. So I've been trying to avoid that, and I'll share some of the things that I've been doing to help me avoid that, which is just use LLMs everywhere as much as possible so that I gain experience, right down to toilets. I was in Seoul some months ago, and I accidentally pressed this emergency button. Now everything is written in Korean. I had no idea how to turn this thing off, so I called up the hotel reception and said, I turned on this emergency button. I have no idea. And the guy said, "Sir, do you want some water?" So, luckily, a few days ago, ChatGPT's advanced voice mode had been enabled. So, I took the phone, said, translate everything that I say into Korean, kept the phone next to me, and said, I accidentally pressed this emergency thing. I just want to let you know that there is no emergency. It translated it perfectly into Korean. The receptionist understood it and he laughed and he said, "No problem, sir. We will take care of it." Day to day uses ultimately help me in so many ways, both in learning and in teaching. Let's start with learning. Notebook LM from Google is perhaps the one tool which has, at least in the last month, completely transformed the way in which I learn. The way Notebook LM works is, if I can get the browser on, let's go here. This, yeah, you can add any source, could be a Google Doc, could be slides, PDFs, whatever. It could be linked to a website, it could be a YouTube video, or any text that you paste. So sometimes I just copy paste from my study material into this, and there are a few things that I can do. The easy thing is I can just chat with it. I can ask a question like, what does this module cover, and it'll give me a decent summary. But honestly, reading is boring, because in comparison, it also generates a podcast. It's a short 6 to 10 minute podcast, and it is brilliant. Two people talking to each other, covering the topics, not in a very deep way, in a light way that I can listen to when I'm cycling to work. Apart from that, you can create your FAQs, study guides, table of contents, etc. It is a great tool for studying, at least for me, especially when I'm studying a new topic. It's also a great tool to help me create presentations. At the Data Hack Summit last month, I gave a presentation in which the entire presentation was 100% generated using an LLM. I just fed it all the material that I wanted to talk about, and it created the transitions, it created the embeddings, it created most of the content. In fact, just during this talk, while Arun was speaking, I went to Claude.ai and said, create a sample reveal.js presentation about LLMs. That's all. And then it went ahead, did a lot of work, and it generated some code that created a presentation. And here's what it is. You can see that it has, in about 1 minute 15 seconds, created an entire slide deck filling in both the content and the format. The LLMs are great at language, and code is a language. So you don't have to rely on LLMs only talking natural language. You can use them to write code sometimes, and that actually makes them pretty reliable, more so than usual. I also use it a lot for research. This, the way I use it for research is, and I built a little tool by myself. And the reason I could build a tool is because LLMs are helping me build tools in the first place. So I pick a topic like, let's say this is all of, uploaded all of the papers related to biomolecules on archive. And then let's say I ask a question, what are modern ways of, let's say, computing protein folding structures? And I'm spelling protein wrong, but that's all right. It's smart enough. So it identifies the most relevant papers. It reads through those papers. It summarizes the result for me. And it also tells me which of these papers are which of these are interrelated. So I can say, oh, are there some clusters of papers? Okay, it looks like there is one big cluster of very related papers. And then there are some smaller clusters of other topics. So what is this particularly about? Summarize that and understand that, oh, this is about ensemble models around kinetic mechanisms, whatever that is. And if I don't understand it, it's too complex, then I can say, look, give it to me in a succinct way, simple enough for a LinkedIn post, and summarize it in that format. So then it'll give me in bullet points, step by step, okay, this is about these 3 points. And it gives me the hashtags that I can put into a LinkedIn post also. Or I can say, is there some unusual topic that I have not yet researched? Okay, looks like there are a couple of topics on something to do with beta hairpin and atomic detail milestones, which are related to protein folding structures, but are somewhat unusual topics. So now this is probably an area that I need to poke because it is at the fringes. Now, while this is something that is powerful, to begin with, one of the simplest things that we can do is go to ChatGPT or a tool like Perplexity, which can search natively and ask basic questions like, okay, what is the latest news about the, let's say, Israel conflict? And by the way, there is for some of you an option called Search the Web, which has a slightly more detailed search capability with citations, and that's more powerful, but it's being rolled out, so in a few days you should probably see it. And yeah, I get the news this way. Of course, if this were on mobile, which is how I consume a fair bit of it, I would just ask it to read aloud. In fact, I don't even ask it to read aloud by typing or clicking. I just speak to it because ChatGPT's advanced voice mode, which I already mentioned I was using in Korea, is something that you can literally talk to. So you ask it what is the news, it will tell you what the news is. Now, all of this is as a learner. As a teacher, and I teach a few courses, I'm also trying to pass on that same principle, which is use LLMs as much as possible. So one of the rules in the course is, even for the exams, you can use the internet, you can use WhatsApp, you can use ChatGPT, your notes, your friends, your pets, whatever you want to use are perfectly allowed in the exam. And I use it to construct the course material as well. That includes, for instance, creating a virtual teaching assistant. What I did was uploaded all of the course curriculum into a custom GPT in ChatGPT. There is a thing that you will see on the left side called Explore GPTs that allows you to create, at least for the paid subscribers, create a version of your own version of ChatGPT, which anyone can use. And I uploaded the material there. Now has become effectively a virtual teaching assistant, and it reduces the load on my teaching assistants, and people are using it to moderate effectiveness. Another thing is I record these sessions explaining content, and then we take a transcript of it. We create a summary out of that transcript and add it as lecture notes. This is how half the course got built. Now, what that does, it does is, see, for me, preparing course material and content is a pain. Talking to somebody is slightly easier. So I'll just talk to people. And then we put it to an LLM. It writes down everything. Great. It doesn't make that many mistakes. It summarizes it. Its summaries are usually better than mine. So why would I not use it? Well, actually, it turns out that there are a few reasons why you would not use it. One of them is it's not very good. For example, we said, let's try translating this into Hindi, and it was atrocious. I felt that pain personally because there is this amazingly beautiful scene in Rocky or Rani Ki Prem Kahani where Ranveer Singh has this monologue, which you should see. I'm not even going to describe it. And I said, this I just absolutely have to have the dialogue for. So I passed it to an LLM and got it to translate. Now, here is the thing. He's using a Punjabi Hindi mixed with English. फैटों को फैट नहीं बोल सकते. Now, how on earth is an LLM supposed to translate that? But even otherwise, it did a pretty poor job of it. And we saw that for the Hindi translations of our material content as well. But at this point, I must reiterate something that Ethan Mollick, who's a professor who teaches LLMs, reiterates. He says, see, LLMs are moving forward very rapidly. What today is not possible will very soon become possible. So maintain an impossibility list. Try out a whole bunch of things. List down what are all the things today an LLM cannot do and keep that list. Revisit it every month. You will find very often that what was not possible a month ago suddenly has become possible. And that is one of the good, in fact, powerful ways of keeping pace with the change on LLMs. That, back to you, Priscilla. You're on mute still.
Sorry, clearly I need something to remind me, prompt me to take my microphone off mute. Thank you. That was provided some really practical, helpful ideas to start using, and as you said, to use it continuously in regular life, and so that you are ready to use it for education. We've got a bunch of students, teachers, I don't know who all are who are asking questions. One starts with, what is the full form of LLM? Could you tell us what is an LLM? LLM stands for large language model, but how does that actually work? What is it? Anand, could you take that?
Sure. It's a program that has read a significant chunk of the internet, the books, and so on, and it guesses what the next word is going to be, roughly like how we speak. It's not like we are doing some complicated calculation, reference, and all. We sort of we keep saying a few things, and then our gut feel says we should probably say the next word, and then the next word, and we continue. And LLM is just like that. It's something that keeps generating words. The way it generates words is it roughly remembers the things that it has heard, which is the input, and it has said, which is its output, and predicts what the next word, I'm going to use the word, but actually it's internally called a token, that it should say. But it doesn't really guess only one, it guesses a whole bunch of them, and then it picks one of them. How does it pick? It picks what it thinks is most likely very often. But you can control that. If you want a little more creativity, then you can increase one of the parameters called temperature, which will make it pick things that are lower down the list, or reduce the parameter, which will make it pick things that are more likely. And on some LLMs, I mean, on some, let's say, Bing chat, you will see high creativity versus more precision. That's where they're adjusting this choice. But ultimately, it's a machine that by and large keeps it says the first thing that comes to its mind.
Okay, thank you. So we have Mr. Balram Singh who asks, sir, most of the students in today's academia, they do coding projects with the help of ChatGPT only. They fix their errors with ChatGPT. So how does this help in learning? It will just make students dependent on ChatGPT. Professor?
Yeah, I think this is a very classic question, and I'm sure we would have asked this question when calculators also came into play. Because the same question was asked. I mean, if I use calculator, then the human ability to calculate goes down. So the general response to the question, in fact, this is one point that I did not mention in my presentation because I thought this will come up, is the most important thing is you have to ask what is it that you want to train your students in. Unless you state that, you cannot really design or even prescribe the tools that you want to use. As an example, if I say that for my audience, okay, for my classroom audience, I want them to learn certain skills, for example, coding on their own, then I will not allow them to use ChatGPT. But if I say that I'm okay, that is not the skill that I'm worried about. It is a different kind of a skill set that I want to impart, where they're able to see the code and either be innovative, come up with better ones, or even figure out errors in that, or even tell me what is it actually doing, then I don't mind them using ChatGPT. So the point that I'm trying to make is, please define your learning outcomes first, and then you can decide whether you allow them to use ChatGPT or not the other way around. I say I allow them to use ChatGPT and say, oh, what happens to their learning skills? No, but you have to state them first that you want them to learn this. Then everything gets decided once you state the learning objectives and outcomes very clearly. And this is true even in the past. Even in the past, see, when I switch from academic audience to industry audience, I redefine the outcomes for them. For an academic audience, I would like them to learn to derive certain equations and so on. But for the industry audience, that's not my objective. That's not the learning outcome. In fact, I'm more worried about their ability to use it in practice. Right? It's not that I'm not interested that for the classroom audience, but certainly not derivation is not on the outcomes. So I'll use a different thing. So these things keep changing. We will have to go and ask, should I redefine my outcomes? And that is again tied to where your audience is going to go. Are they actually being trained for industry? Are they being trained for fundamental research? And so on. So ask these questions first, and then the rest of the answers will follow.
I remember seeing something also that it's about that, information, whether teachers are information gatekeepers or whether you're helping students to find out for themselves. So, I mean, I think I saw something during COVID that a number of teachers realized that you cannot give assignments for which students will Google the answer. And then one teacher said that rather, let me teach them how to ask Google the right questions. And that,
Absolutely,
after all,
absolutely.
in the real world, that's going to be of more use than simply have you memorize this answer.
So
Let's move from,
you
yeah,
redefine the competencies and skills.
let's move a minute away from campus education to Anand. There's a question from Krishna KK, and he asks, how can a company building learning technology products leverage generative AI? But that can go to both of you. It was asked to Anand, but really, I'd take
Go
questions
ahead.
from both,
Let
answers
Anand
from
take.
both of you for that.
It is more into his syllabus. I'll
I,
take my
I only
syllabus for
thought because
generative.
you are of course creating content for Swayam Prabha, so I thought you could provide some
No.
perspective from that. But
Let him
Anand, please
answer
go ahead.
that. Yeah, go ahead.
So, LLMs can help provide a personalized learning experience. They're also very good at automated content creation. They're great at interactive tutoring and support, of which I showed one example. Increasing engagement, whether it's interactive stories or challenges or scenarios that make the process more engaging. Assessment and feedback becomes more effective. Accessibility and inclusivity is another fairly powerful feature. That apart from a support perspective, analytics and predictive insights on the student's performance is yet another area. For instance, reviewing the feedback, and you can use it for collaborating with an LLM to co-create the content. I didn't say this answer. I just put it to ChatGPT and got this answer, and I'm reading it out.
Do we believe you?
It's
Oh,
pretty good answer, I think.
it's very convincing.
Okay.
So that's exactly. I think that's a very good point, Priscilla. I think the student should learn to ask this question, but of course, it is not to become a very skeptic all the time. But I think to be on guard. And I just wanted to add to what Anand has said that, and it's also linked to somewhat peripherally linked to the previous question. See, whenever you're using a new tool, like, I mean, especially like ChatGPT and so on, and you compare with the calculator era, you are able to perhaps now solve more challenging problems. You can focus on solving more challenging problems, or you can define more challenging problems now that there is a technology that is taking care of some of the things that you're spending time on earlier, right? As an example, when calculators are allowed, let's say in undergrad, uh, all universities allow calculators. So I can now ask, in fact, I conduct computer based exams. So I can ask questions that require the use of a computer. And that means I can ask more advanced questions, right? So likewise, companies can also now think of focusing on more advanced stuff, or improving their product profile, or coming up with more innovations now that a bulk of their routine stuff or some other stuff is taken care by ChatGPT. So if you want to look at it positively, you can always look at it positively and reorient yourself. And that's the message. Be inclusive, realign. These are the
Right.
two things.
Right. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Um, Sujata Iyer asks, she asks, what sort of critical thinking course would you offer where students learn counterfactual reasoning? Should students not be asked to specialize deeply so that they can verify the output of the LLM? Would you like to
Yeah,
take
I
that?
think I've already kind of answered earlier.
Yeah,
If you have a course that is meant for training students in critical thinking, then go ahead and define the outcomes. You can use ChatGPT. Critical thinking is a very very important future skill, according to a lot of surveys that have come up, and that is where the human brain, human intelligence, at least supersedes AI as of today. And um, use them as tools, and say, look, feel free to use ChatGPT for troubleshooting, feel free to use ChatGPT for consulting the possibilities, because it can skim through a lot of possibilities and give you. One thing that it cannot do as of now is being creative and being able to see some scenarios that it has not seen. You have heard Anand saying earlier, LLMs are trained on what they have seen, but they cannot imagine new scenarios, right? Not necessarily as of today. I'll be very cautious because I I will go by what the history of LLMs and what Anand said. We may say something is not possible today, a few months later it may be violated. So go ahead and offer a course on critical thinking. Exactly how it should be designed, it entirely depends on your thing. But the only challenge is now for the teacher to come up with questions that are beyond the reach of ChatGPT. And that's where I think teachers are being challenged today. And that's fine. I think we have to be challenged. Keep saying that if street vendors, everybody has switched over to UPI in India, right? They have realigned themselves, a lot of them. Then teachers should also realign. Everybody needs to realign from time to time. And yes, either we realign or we resign, one of these things.
A lot of changes ahead. Let's move
Yeah.
on to the next question. So Mehboob Basha Sheikh asks, how can we leverage AI effectively while ensuring that it does not diminish human intellect? A related, I mean, sort of related question. I saw somebody asking, Praneeth VSS asked, what does AI have to do with the mass layoffs that are taking place? So whether these are students or teachers looking ahead to careers, can we consider both of those?
I read this somewhere very recently that AI is not going to take away jobs of people. It's, of course, it's going to take away jobs if you do not know how to use these modern tools, right? Number one. And if you have the same skills as these AI tools have. So obviously, one needs a new set of skills. And there is going to be a displacement, but it's not going to be a complete layoff kind of thing. I think every milestone change in the last few centuries has brought about displacements. And I mean, people used to write tongas earlier. When automobiles came in, they had to learn how to use automobiles. If you refuse to learn, I'll say I'll only hire drive a tonga, then of course you'll be jobless. There is no doubt about it. That's one answer to layoffs. The second
Anand,
thing is,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry, I was
Maybe
just going to
I'll come
say,
back.
I thought
Apart
you were
from
going to
layoffs,
quote that other one where they say AI doesn't steal your job. It's the other guy who's using AI that's stealing your job. So you may as
Exactly.
well be the other guy.
Correct.
But back to you.
Absolutely.
and the bit about diminishing intellect.
Yeah. So I don't think human intellect diminishes. See, you have to. In fact, if you pay attention to what both Anand and I have been saying, we have to come up with new skills. That is, now we have to explore new arenas of our intellect, which is in asking, which is in verifying, validating, which means now that we have to dip into new, or you can say advanced areas. So AI is in fact pushing us to explore other areas of our intellect which we have not explored, or which we have been either lazy or never felt the need to. So we will always be kept busy. There is no way this world has been created where we become completely idle. It is just that new intellectual skills have to be focused on. And yes, so that you'll rise with the technology. I mean, people didn't know how to use a computer before, but now you know how to intellectually also handle a computer, right? And you know all the way from so-called ad hoc solutions, jugaad, to everything. Now we have figured out. So human intellect will not go away anywhere. It is just the tasks that you have been focusing on are changing. So there is no way of human intellect diminishing. It is just a perceptive fear that is very natural.
Anand, do you want to add to that about the fear of human intellect?
No,
No,
no.
okay.
Yes.
Let me move then to there's a very specific question, especially given that you showed an app which could generate research titles, right? Research paper titles. So Lakshmi Jayamohan asks, I find ChatGPT and Gemini tend to make up titles of research papers which do not exist when I ask for them on a particular topic. Why is this so? Are there better options?
LLMs speak the first thing that come to their mind. Sometimes they make mistakes. Um, Arun and I have a classmate, Rajnikant, and he had this habit of asking me every now and then, Anand, are you sure? And he used to comment that every time he asks me that question, I would pause and think and turn around and say, no. arguably I wasn't too different from this LLM that was hallucinating. I'd say something, and anytime he says, "Are you sure?" Like, okay, yeah, maybe not. And therefore, that's a pretty good question to ask an LLM as well. I do that very often. Are you sure? And
Okay.
quite often it'll say, on further introspection, I find that actually this does not exist, or I actually got this wrong. Now, it obviously is not introspecting either. It's again speaking off the top of its head, but it's a good technique. Secondly, you could ask it to provide citations, which is simply also give me the links to the papers. If it is making up those, it may also end up making up those links, but you can just click and verify. And sometimes it will get the paper title right, but the link wrong. That happens in fewer cases. In that case, you can at least do a Google search for that paper and find it. But in short, verify. I have stopped thinking of LLMs as models or programs. It makes us feel secure in their reliability and repeatability. I have started thinking of them as people, interns, and I don't rely on interns that much, or at least I don't trust interns that much. I verify.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
So
very
we.
important. In fact, I did ask LLM maybe 9 months ago. I asked, 9 months it takes to deliver. So I asked, "Will you be a human?" And it said, "I'm not, but I expect to be a human very soon." Because,
Oh, wow.
right, I mean, because they are just packing me with a lot of emotional content and so on. So don't be surprised if I start behaving like humans. So the good news is that although it is AI and machine learning, it is becoming human, and you know that humans are capable of giving all kinds of answers with emotions and so on. So yes, I agree with Anand that you should not think of LLMs as models at all. They are your live I would say, I think that M should be thrown away. That M should be something else. Although it's called large language models, you should expect them to be wrong, and you should verify. And that's exactly the same point I'm trying to say earlier. These are the new skills, and that's where you have to train your intellect now in that. How do you verify? How do you stay on top of it? Is a new intellect that will come up. Right.
Okay, so I think someone else had also. Okay, from Aishwarya Srihari to Anand, thank you for simplifying the uses of AI. And so she asked, could you name all the AIs that you spoke about in this session? And could you also talk about how a teacher can use character.ai to teach students in class? I also thought some of the listing of the tools that you had mentioned went by very fast. I was also taking notes, so if you could list those.
Notebook LM by Google was the first I mentioned. It can create podcasts which are stunning. uh, ChatGPT and Gemini, of course. Claude.ai has an interesting feature called artifacts, which lets you write code as you use them. Um, Whisper is an open source model that you can probably find somewhere, which can translate audio to text, but you can also upload your audio into definitely Gemini, maybe ChatGPT, I don't know, and get a transcript of that. That apart, you will find several other good ones on WhatsApp. You will find Meta, the Meta AI, which is really a model called Llama, which is an open weights model that's available on every machine. Perplexity is fairly popular when it comes to searching with an AI. So it will search and then give you a direct answer to your question based on that. A few others that I use very often that I didn't mention. There's one called Find, PHIND, which is good for searching code and getting answers for programmatic code. But the AI that I use the most actually is an AI code editor called Cursor, Cursor. It's dramatically increased my productivity, and the way in which I code has also completely changed. I'm not going to go into that because if I do, that will be a long explanation. On the second part of the question, I have not used character AI, so I have no idea about that. Sorry.
Okay,
And I just wanted to
Professor, maybe.
quickly add, Anand, that's a very good list. Uh, I have been using not directly these tools, but there are products like, for example, it could be Google Meet, it could be Zoom, and so on. All of these are AI equipped, And I don't work for Zoom. I'm not advertising for Zoom or anything like that. But very recently, for a meeting, I had used Zoom's AI companion, for example. If with the consent of everybody in the room, I had switched it on, and so that it will summarize the discussions, and I think it did a fantastic job. And this kind of facility is now being equipped in all software, piece software, conversational software, and so on. So one can use those tools also. But having said that, it doesn't mean that you should lose your focus, because I tell you, I remember 2 years ago when I was speaking, one of my colleagues in Japan, this was in Japan, I was giving a talk, and he was being a bit naughty, and he sent me a transcript of my speech using the AI tool. This was about a couple of years ago, and it spoke real gibberish in between. Okay, it has nothing to do, and you don't even want to read it. So it can really do a very wrong job. So you have to be still focused, but it will be like an assistant. Like Anand said earlier, you think of it as an assistant who can make mistakes, but at least it will take notes for you as you're speaking. And I don't know if StreamYard has that. Right now, it has an AI companion that would have summarized our discussions. But watch out for such features also in all the products.
Yeah, so there are a large number of questions coming in, and several people have mentioned, that their queries are not yet being addressed. So Anand does mention that he can they can answer some of them offline. We will try and save some of these. We will try and the questions we cannot take during this session, we will try. Especially the list of tools, I think we should be able to hopefully post.
Right.
There's a question from a school student. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right, Thimavajula Niri, who says, for school students like us who are studying at Kendriya Vidyalaya, we have been given books and advice to read about AI, but how to learn how to use for day-to-day activities? I think, Laji, what would you suggest for a school student?
Use it for day-to-day activities.
Such as? To do what? You mentioned the toilet example, but apart from that.
I have missed the bus to school. I would normally use Google Maps to find out the next bus. What if there is an AI tool for it? Spend 5 minutes figuring out if there is something which I can talk to and ask where is, what is the route to that particular location. I'm planning to buy a new, I don't know, let's say, calculator. What is the best price quality trade off for a calculator? Rather than us doing the research, what LLM can we pass it on to? And it's actually not that difficult, because Amazon has, or is bringing up in some geographies, a feature where you can do that kind of search. You're planning to study, you don't feel motivated, you don't feel like studying. Don't ask somebody, what shall we do? Ask an LLM. I don't feel like studying. What should I do? You don't have to listen to it. Or you just feel like completely wasting somebody's time. How can I pester them? Ask the LLM to give you ideas to pester somebody, to trouble them, make a nuisance. In short, before you do anything, ask an LLM. You should start thinking of an LLM like a twin brother who's always with you, or a ghost that is following you in your ear. Now, if you had that kind of superpower, and you ask, what can I do with a ghost that is in my ear that will do all my biddings, or a genie that is, you are literally being given Aladdin and the lamp, and you're asking, what can I do with it? The answer is anything, but you need to do it. Just do it. Arun,
Yeah,
you're going to say something.
I'll probably, I know how savvy Anand is right from my BTech days, so I can understand where he's coming from. But I probably would balance it out, being in the education field, and being worried about social interactions also.
Hmm.
So and being worried about a few other things. Yes, use LLMs like you're using many other books and so on, but as at least at the school children level, it'll be nice to do this under parental guidance as much as possible, and so that you do it jointly. I mean, you say, father and my parent and I are bored together, so what do we do, and so on, right? Do it under parental guidance, number one. Number two, see if actually you can also ask a human being first, and then also have an LLM, or you can switch the other way around. You can ask an LLM and say, look, I asked this. This is the answer that I got. What do you think? But do this, but not just go by this, because there is a risk that you may be hooked to the machine for a long time, and there is this huge concern about impact on social and emotional intelligence with the increasing use of AI tools, right? So what Anand was talking about is the technical set of possibilities for which you can use LLM. But when you implement that in practice, then I would say that you have to watch out for that social and emotional intelligence as well, because at every in every walk of life, we will be interacting with humans, and if we are only used to interacting with LLMs, then again that becomes an issue. So do balance it out. Use LLMs along with parental guidance, teacher guidance, and so on at the school level. Gradually, when you grow to be responsible and you understand the world better and so on, then it becomes easier to know what role LLMs play in your life, and where to place them, how much to trust them, and so on. Right. So school children should certainly keep this in mind.
Thank you, so for bringing in those safeguards as well, and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
the concerns about and these are emerging concerns because it's emerging technology. So I'm
Absolutely.
sure we will continue to discover these. Let
That's
me ask.
because also data privacy is a concern. See, that is another issue, right? When we ask and so on, and you tell the LLM it is wrong, no, this is what I am feeling, and so on, it becomes a data to the LLM, and anybody can hack it. LLM may not use it, but somebody who has access to LLM can hack that and steal your data. So
So
all of
when I
that.
ask a question, is that saved as something to do with me?
Asking a
It is.
question, yes, is okay, but does is your question going invisibly with all the other tags, that who you are, what is your background, what is your age, gender, and all of that? Then that's a treasure that people hackers are looking for.
Right. We will keep that in mind. We have a question from K. Balasubramanian Kumar, who says, as Anand sir pointed out, the Claude and Meta AI produces a seamless business model for youngsters who aspire to build their career. Can you kindly talk about these business models?
Claude as an organization, or Claude as a model, is produced by Anthropic, which has its primary business model as something very similar to OpenAI, which is build what is called a foundational model on top of which other people can build things. The team that created the Anthropic team is an offshoot of the OpenAI team, and many of the AI and especially foundational AI model companies are people that came from an original OpenAI team whose objective was to build artificial general intelligence, effectively the next super intelligent being system, whatever. That is one kind of business model. It's a very core business model that a few companies will focus on. There'll be very few winners, but they will win hugely, as OpenAI's recent $6 billion fundraise, which is the largest ever, attests to. That apart, there are several things that people are building on top of or around these. And Meta is a good example of that. They have built their own foundational model, but they're not trying to make money out of that. That's not their business model. They got a $2.2 billion uplift on advertising revenue because they were providing advertising tools to Facebook customers. So the applied use of LLMs is a broader use case. It's a lot more fragmented. It captures a lot more value. Now, then comes the question, if that is the case, what are the different kinds of business models in that space? Short answer, nobody knows at this stage. It is so fragmented, it is so dynamic that people are still trying to figure out. There are several business models today, but it is hard to say what is winning. But a few principles are coming out. One, LLMs don't seem to be favoring disruption that much. They seem to be favoring entrenched players. That is, if you already have customers, then you are finding it easier to offer value added services to them than pull customers onto a new base, except in very few notable exceptions. Uh, LLMs are becoming easier to implement within an organization than as a service, because when you start implementing it as a service, several other people find that it is so easy to jump onto that bandwagon that you get outcompeted, or your clients start insourcing that. That is, they decide to do it themselves. So, for these two reasons, what we're finding is people who are in a position of strength and who have a clear need are able to solve their needs better, and business models that are winning are not clear.
Okay. We are out of time at 6 o'clock. Let me end with one last question. I think Sujata Iyer had asked about using Indic ethical models to train AI. Right? One sec. She mentioned are Indic ethics trained models, any Indic ethics trained models that can be tried out as opposed to Western ethics, I imagine. What ethical basis are we? Professor, you mentioned that India is coming up with its own guidelines. Uh, what
It's
should
still
be
far
kept in
away.
mind?
I think they've had several rounds of discussions, and committees have been formed, and they have given their inputs. We have not really come up with a set of regulations and so on yet, legal ones. There has been a Data Privacy Act that has been put in place for the digital field, but there is no Privacy Act for AI yet. We are still far away from that. But there is this whole field of responsible AI, and a lot of discussions are happening at the government level, at the academic level, and so on. So I'm not sure if something concrete has been set to train these models on some ethics base. People, as I said, ethics is very tricky. I mean, there are some tricky questions that people are unable to answer yet. I mean, if I'm using an AI tool, let us say as a surgeon, AI for healthcare, and if I go wrong, if the surgeon goes wrong, then who should be blamed, and so on. So there are all these questions that need to be answered, and therefore I'm not sure if there is a concrete base on which you can train these AI models in. So a lot of people are using just some common sense and so on, and giving cautions and stating their own rules locally and so on within the institutions and so on. Maybe Anand can actually comment further on this.
It's in a very nascent stages. There's more about regulation than about ethics. Firstly, there are a lot of Indic models, models trained in India on Indic languages that are coming up. Sarvam.ai, there's a Dhenu Vision model, there's an Indic LLM suite of
So you have AI
tests.
for Bharat also, right?
AI for Bharat as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's one dimension. The other is, so there is the India AI mission, for instance, which is a March 2024 initiative or a national level mission to strengthen the overall AI ecosystem in India. There is a regulatory ecosystem that the Indian government is talking about but hasn't yet come out with. And there are initiatives around, for instance, Moral Bench is a benchmark, and this is probably the closest that comes to this question. So it's a, an evaluation framework. You take a model and you apply Moral Bench to it. It will tell you how well a given model adheres to the ethical standards in Indian society. Now, training to match that is the next step. It may have happened. I'm not aware of it, but it's in the early stages. Once again, I don't know this answer. I'm just reading from ChatGPT.
Okay, we're still not sure whether to believe you, but we're going to end now. You can go back and check that. Those of you who are fact checking here, whether with ChatGPT asking further questions or asking for other tools and other apps. Thank you so much. This is, I know, just barely the tip of the iceberg of the many ways in which we can explore AI in education. And I'm sure we will return to this topic again. But thank you so much for expanding our horizons so much, for giving us very specific tools, as well as for making us think about the big questions. For those of you whose questions we could not reach, we will try and get to that. Please do join us for the next webinar next month. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you especially to Professor Tanigarala and to Anand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priscilla. A very lively show. Thank you.
Everyone.